Hello, good evening, welcome, uh, welcome. I want to share with you today factors that influence entrepreneurship drive. Factors that influence entrepreneurship drive in an individual, in a culture, in a country. Some of the factors that influence such drive, in a free market like ours, if ours is free. And what I mean is that in a market where they say that there's some level of competition. They say they promote the private sector. If we are going to develop as a country, the link between those who are going to be responsible for taking the ideas that are being generated, from our institutions, from government, into into an economic, value, or to create product, services, and employment, will come from the people with the entrepreneurship drive. Usually they ask that, are entrepreneurs born or raised? Is the normal question that you hear people ask. The other time I was talking with my friend Oscar, and he was asking, so what do you think? Entrepreneurs born or made? I think that there are a lot of factors. There's not one factor that will put that drive in any person. I think that there are a lot of factors that come into play for people to have this entrepreneurship drive, and I don't think that any of them is above the other. But they shape you along the way. So some of the factors, the general external factors that you see in a culture, in a culture. Thank you. Yeah, we are well. Trust I'm good. Yes, you are well, Mr. Anthony. Um, some of the factors that contribute to having a lot of people to develop this drive to become entrepreneurs. I think that the government, or the people who run the economy, in terms of the politicians, they have a role to play. They have a role to play, and then at the individual levels too, there's a role that is played. And so, if for instance, if you are in an economy where the economy is managed well, I think that it makes it easier for people to see people who try to build businesses, and for them to become examples where people can copy. But when you are in an economy where it is difficult for businesses to succeed, then that drive will go down. It will decline. So the kind of economy that is run, the kind of government regulations and policies that support research and that support startups, they influence, the entrepreneurship drive in the people, in the country, in the economy. Sometimes access to business capital. If an African government is seriously pushing entrepreneurship, as sometimes they say, then the capital, access to capital to people who start businesses, should be there, and they should be cheap. They should get capital maybe around 10% a year, not 30%, not 40%, with a lot of collateral, with a lot of guarantees and insurance and a lot of uncertainty. So these factors will push drive, because if I see my uncle, if I ever growing up, if my uncle was a business person and he succeeded because the environment for business was right, uh, along the line I will have a good example, and that could push me into becoming one. But if I saw somebody who started business and who ended up destroying himself and destroying his family, then that drive will not be there for me to look at it. Sometimes the competition that is created in the economy, for instance, if you look at our retail business now, around the main cities in Ghana. You see that the Asians are coming. The Chinese are in the retail business now. The competition, they will wipe out our people. And so if your mother started business and she's done it for 20 years, and then the Chinese come to, bring the same goods, or sometimes inferior and cheaper, and your mother is out of business, what will make you go to try? Because at the end of it, you can't predict what it will become. So there are external factors, and mainly they are controlled by government and their policies and the politicians. So if you have people who get into government who see the need for them to make a lot of things right, or rightly said, for people to get into business, that enhances the drive in people. On the other hand, if government is not doing that and there are no jobs, there are other factors that can also influence an individual for them to have that drive. So sometimes there are people who have had ideas just because they went to work somewhere. They saw how the business was being done, how things were being run, and then they had an idea to go and start a business. I remember the first time we traveled someplace outside the country, we were working, and I saw that, but this one, I can do it in Ghana. That was the first thing that came in my mind. This is that simple that I can also organize people and do the same. And so sometimes where you happen to work, where you happen to have some contact with some people who are doing business, they can push some kind of drive in you. The other thing could be sometimes when there is no job, when there is a disaster, when you're fired, when they have pushed you out of employment, sometimes there could be a drive from that. There are other times that people have had the drive for entrepreneurship by just seeing their family people in business. Maybe your father was a business person, maybe your mother was a business person, your uncle was a business person, your brother was a business person. And so you saw it around you. Maybe your grandmother was doing something, business, your grandfather was a business, something. So in the environment, the family that you grew up in, sometimes they can put some kind of drive in you. And really, they show that most people who started business had some kind of influence from the family level. So you can have an entrepreneurship drive just because you grew up in an environment where people were doing business. Sometimes the kind of education that you get can also influence you. Maybe you went to school and you studied some particular course, and you heard a lot about entrepreneurship, you heard a lot about business, you heard a lot about what people have become by starting businesses. Sometimes the interest can be built from those things as well. Age can also affect your drive. If you're 17, 18, 19, 20, you want to try something. You just want to try. If you face, there's no child, there's no wife. But when you're around 70, 60, the drive may not be so much intense. So you look at your age, and sometimes too, maybe whether you're male or female, they can affect the drive as well. I think that they say that a lot of women start business in our country, which is true, especially those who haven't gone to school that much. They start trading. If you go to the market, a lot of them are women. Mainly those who travel, who move from, let's say, they go to Techima and they buy things, they send them to Accra. A lot of them are doing business because maybe those kind of businesses are reserved maybe for women. So whether you're male or female can have some kind of drive in you because you see your friend selling orange on the table, that you may get some influence from there. Or you see your friend going to cut the bale and start to sell at Makola or at Adum or somewhere, that can push a drive in you. So sometimes too, people's idea in terms of technology, in terms of technical skills, can put some drive in them. Let's say you know how to maybe build a website or something like that. It will be very easy for you to start a website business because you can innovate, you can create something, you can improve on a product, you can come up with something. Innovation can sometimes push people, sometimes can get drive into people for them to start businesses. Sometimes too, people are just free people, crazy. They want freedom, they want independence, and they just want to try anything. There's no control, there's nobody to take care of them. And I see that most people with that kind of background have that drive to try something because they are all their lives they don't like to be controlled because of how they've been brought up. Maybe growing up nobody really controlled them, and I think that is one of the factors that will push a lot of entrepreneurship drive in people, where people are not controlled, they are free. So he wants to try a business. He won't find a father who is saying that no, 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 don't try the business, go and do law, or go and become a doctor, or go and become a journalist, because that usually there's nobody, or he's coming from a family where they are not contained and controlled so much. That free radical lifestyle sometimes builds an entrepreneurship drive in people, and I think most entrepreneurs come from that kind of background, because there's that freedom, and so they want that freedom, perpetual freedom. They don't want control, they don't want people, they don't want to be under anybody. And sometimes too, maybe you just have that wish that you want to be rich, and maybe you look around and you see that a lot of people who have been rich look like people who are entrepreneurs. And so sometimes that desire, that passion, that goal, that aspiration to say that I want to create wealth may push some people to have entrepreneurship drive. So they come from all kind of areas. Your desire to just say that I don't want to stay all my life poor and begging. I want to just start something, and let's see what happens, especially if you have seen some people around you. Sometimes the drive may also come from just that it's just your aspiration. You just want to, because building a business is actually a product, and some people just want to do something to say that I was also able to do something. I was able to build a business. I was able to start this thing. They may not know what they are doing, but they just want to do something. And sometimes you can have that drive for entrepreneurship from there. And so my name is Obinda. I'm talking about entrepreneurship drive. Factors that influence entrepreneurship drive. They don't just happen. There are a lot of mix, that will make somebody to end up becoming an entrepreneur. There are many. There are many. Some of them are from government. Some of them are from family. Some of them are from your own personal tendency, your own personal, gift or aspiration. Some of them is just because you happen to be in a good country where people are making the right policies to push a lot of people to starting businesses. And so, and there are some countries too, when you're there, that will push you to start a business, because almost everything there is against entrepreneurship. The culture is not built to accept people who fail in businesses, or the culture is not built for people to have capital if they want to grow their businesses. The trust is low. So there are other factors. There are a lot of factors that will push somebody to have that drive to keep going. And there are other factors too that would also come from you or your family background, or where you were born. So my name is Obinako, and you're talking about some of these drives. And usually when they are making a lot of academic discussions and arguments about what really pushes a lot of people to start business, I think some of those exercises can be done in countries where they are not under pressure to create jobs. They are not under pressure for people to find something to do, so they can turn those into academic exercises. Now, those of us who are here, we don't have that luxury to turn it into an academic exercise. The reality is that we have to make some of these factors. We have to, what should I say? Concentrate on some of these factors to make sure that if indeed they can produce a lot of entrepreneurs, they should produce a lot of entrepreneurs, because that is how we are going to create people who can create jobs for the economy. And we have to work on them, other than just waiting for some foreigners and some foreign investors, and we keep on hearing those things. We are looking for some Chinese investors to come here and create a job, and we are looking for this money. We are looking. How about your own people? Can you also look? Maybe just look for the Chinese money to come. Look for the money from America to come, all the big companies from those countries to come. But maybe can you also give 20-30% of your time and resources to looking at the factors that will make a lot of your people to start their own businesses and succeed? It's not just starting, but for them to succeed, or at least for the pressure that which the pressure is natural for anybody to build any business, to become an entrepreneur. There is pressure, and it happens in every country. But can we at least look at some of those things and make sure that those impediments, those barriers are reduced, so that we can continue to have a lot of this drive, entrepreneurship drive, in our people, in the young people, in those who have finished school. We can, because a lot of things can be cultivated. Some of these things are just environmental, and so when you create the environment, when you create a culture, we can have a lot of people who end up creating businesses. It's not because they were born with it. Some may have maybe some natural talent for it. I don't know, but I think that a lot of it would come from just environmental factors, environmental conditions. And some of those conditions, you can see that if you work in an economy where there is maybe a state funds somewhere, that when you're able to start up a business and you maybe the first year you're able to generate 100,000 revenue, maybe the government can give you free maybe grant also. They can give you some grant, or they can give you very uh, cheap loan to support and grow your business. If they say you can prove with your documents that you have employed 20 people, and if the government or the country is serious about creating a lot of entrepreneurs, they could say that maybe we have these funds where it doesn't have to be political, and there don't have to be so many factors and so many things that you have to fail for you to access those kind of grants and money. There are things that government can do to encourage people to keep this drive, because the more people see people who enter into business and give up and lose everything, the more the drive is gone. You don't want to go through, because not everybody is really built to keep going, and not seeing results. The journey itself is tough, and so the things that, after all, when your business succeeds, it doesn't only help you alone. If you employ one person, it's the country. You employ a citizen of a country who could otherwise be anybody who could go around and do anything. So when somebody succeeds in becoming an entrepreneur and opening businesses or creating employment, that person, one way or the other, is important to the economy. And whatever that we can do to support wherever we are, I think Africans should look at that, because these are the factors that will improve the kind of country that we have, the kind of environment that we have. After all, it's these entrepreneurs who are going to create better services, better products, better businesses, that will create solutions, that will create employment. If we say that we are going to solve unemployment issues, it's not so much with government directly. It's more with the one who is employing one person, the other one who is employing 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, in their tailoring business, or in their mechanic shop, in their provision shop, in their construction company, in their block selling company, whatever business that their people are doing. Maybe somebody is producing films, those guys are employing 2, 3 people. Somebody is selling computers. Those, if you can get a lot of people to, or if you can find a way of creating this kind of drive among a lot of people, then we can reduce the unemployment. Now, the more we have the people staying at home without anywhere to work, the more dangerous it is for any country. So there are external factors that countries which are very serious, saying that they want to make sure that entrepreneurship is going and is on the way, and is being supported and expanded. And you have to work on it becomes like a catalyst. There should be some kind of stir, there should be some kind of influence, and some of it will be the fact that you have to have some capital for most of these guys who have tested their business model, which is working, and which they know that they are working. The business is working, but he has no capital. He goes to the bank and they're asking him to bring his mother, his father, before they can give him 10,000 loan. Or they give him 10,000 loan and they are taking 5% every week, every month. We are killing a lot of this entrepreneurship drive because of these factors. Only God knows what microfinance has done to entrepreneurship drive in Africa or in our country, where people are charging 10% for giving money for somebody to do business with. Now, you have to be a magician for you to test a business and continue to pay 10% a month, which means that at the end of the year, you are paying about maybe 120%. How are you going to build a business, pay 120% on the money and still have the business capital to do it? It's almost impossible. So there are factors that government must look and make sure that we are encouraging a lot of these people who have desire to keep trying. And you have to just create that so that the more they see and they succeed, the more we have a lot of them having the drive. Let's say you travel to go to maybe another region. Let's say you go to Volta region or you go to Western region, and you go there and you see your friend who you were in school with, who is succeeding as an entrepreneur. Maybe he's into cocoa farming, or maybe he's into fish farming, something, or maybe he's into cattle or piggery, something like that, and he's succeeding. You can see that maybe he has thousands of those sheep there, and he's built all these structures, he's employed people. Do you know what that thing will stir in you? When you see the success of another person, it stirs some kind of force in you. You go back and you start to think. And let's say 1,000 people go to look at that friend. At least maybe you can get 3 of them who will start businesses because they saw somebody else succeed. Now, if that man fails, a lot of people will use that story to say that, listen, it's so difficult for you to do business in our country and succeed because the factors are set against you. So one of the things that maybe they say the government is I don't know. I'm not the government. Yes, a citizen. But some of the factors that will influence entrepreneurship drive is for us to get, access to good business capital. So when the person has gone through a lot of things and the business is working, he doesn't have to go and sell his father to get capital to expand the business. If he has a project that he needs money, he doesn't have to go and pay 10% to another person a month for him to get 100,000 to go and expand that unit. There are a lot of people who have done well with their businesses, who know exactly what to do, but the capital to grow the business is so difficult or is so costly that they end up giving up or staying small. And all the years that they may have followed this business, may have invested their time, their resources, their energy, their intellect, everything, just because they don't have access to good capital, long-term capital, cheap one for the businesses to grow. You see that man may stay small all his life. Yet if there was that access, that man may end up employing 100 people or 200 people. So there are factors that influence the drive and for the expansion. The economy. If the economy is not structured well, people's drive will go down. But when the economy is doing well, and you can see people like you building businesses and not killing themselves, struggling so much, because all countries, free market countries, free economies, they thrive because they have a lot of entrepreneurs. And then it's now a culture, it's now a force. It's now like a religion where young people are very proud to say that I have started something on my own. I'm building a software, I'm building a company, I'm building a manufacturing plant, I'm going to China, I'm doing this. It's a force. You can see that there's a section of them whose mind are looking at creating opportunities for themselves and for the economy and for their family and for everybody. So that is the kind of thing, or those are the kind of things that our economy must look at. Because after all, we are the ones who need the job anyway. We are the ones to create the opportunities. We are the ones to create the product. We are the ones to create this kind of culture that we are encouraging a lot of our people not to kill the entrepreneurship drive. Because sometimes if you don't take care, it will die. So government regulations, sometimes the tax laws, the SNITs, and all those people can kill. Before you even register the business, they take in their tax. What do you need that? The man has not traded anything, he's not sold anything, and yet they are charging him for registering the business. I don't know why, if you so need. So sometimes the governments in Africa, they behave like we have to do them a favor by starting businesses. I think it's the other way around. I think the government should be that much, interested in their young people or in their people starting businesses. And if they have to do anything to encourage that drive, they have to. And there's a lot that has to, be done by people who are that much interested in the growth of their country and who happen to be in the government. But if they are in the government for themselves, then they don't care what happens. But if they are in it to want to see that the country become prosperous, be able to create a lot of employment for their people, and prosperity and dignity for their people, they will be that much interested in the drive, that they give to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and to let that culture expand and grow. That drive is what we are all looking for, because the more you can get a lot of them, this youth, you see the drive that you see the force that most of these youth are using to follow, say, sports or entertainment, or sometimes even what was the other one, the betting that they do on sports. That drive, that passion, if you can channel that passion into the youth going into something like entrepreneurship for themselves, maybe you have 1% success rate, maybe. So these factors we have to look at. And when they say that there are entrepreneurs born, I think that there are other factors that come into play, and I think that they are made more than they are born, if there is anything like being born like that at all. And part of it, major part, are things that the government must do. The other things, maybe you can get the drive, or you can get the drive keep increased by maybe the kind of environment that you had when you were growing up. The things that they told you, the things that you saw as success, the things that you saw. If you saw business people and you saw them counting money and employing people, they may influence the way you look at life. Now, if you didn't grow up with this kind of people and you grew up with maybe civil servants or politicians, those could be your aspirations. So, entrepreneurship drive sometimes is coming from the family, what you saw when you were growing up. And if you saw your mother or father do business, they may affect the way you look at business and the drive that you may have, especially if they succeeded. If they succeeded, you may have some kind of passion. And it's the idea for you to start a business may not look far from you, because you may have grown up in that kind of environment, that kind of culture. So that could build a drive in you. The other thing could be the fact that maybe you have some technological advantage. Maybe you know how to apply something, some technical expertise. Maybe maybe you know how to build a motor, you know how to build a laptop, you know how to do some programming. Sometimes those things can put some drive in you. Sometimes somebody may see what you have done and they would want to just let you, they may just give you an offer. And maybe you never thought of becoming an entrepreneur, but because you're able to build that thing, you innovate, you see something, you always want to improve it. Maybe by chance somebody will look at that and say that, listen, give me one of those. And perhaps a business could be born out of that. Sometimes it's where you work, where you work before or where you work. Sometimes you get to work with maybe in an entrepreneurial business. You saw the man starting the business from ground up. You saw everything that he was doing all by himself. That can maybe influence you to have that drive to also go and try to build a business. So sometimes where you are, some people want to work in big companies. The disadvantage is that you may not know how to build a business when you work so much with the very well established big companies, unless you just want to become a corporate man. You want to become the CEO of a big company. But if you have the desire to build a business, it is better to work with businesses that are sort of India formative. You get to understand, and you get to look at whatever that these guys are doing, and you will see that it's not that strange. They are just like you, who are just doing some, they are trying, and they are doing some trial and error, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. So you are able to uh, see the reality that it's not that they are genius, just that they just keep trying, and maybe out of that they will be able to build a business. So sometimes when you work, it's important. Every now and then you work, you go somewhere, you meet somebody, they are working somewhere, say, I'm interested in starting a business, but I'm afraid. It's because maybe where they work is that much structured, so they don't see a lot of the activities going on. But when you are working with 100, maybe a business that has employed 10 people, 20 people, you get to see whatever they do, every department and what they do. And maybe if you ever try to become an entrepreneur and you want to build that drive, and if we want to increase that drive in our country, we may want to encourage a lot of these people, the young ones, to actually work with businesses that have just started, so that they will get first-hand experience. Because when you get close to somebody who is building, you will know that you can also do it, and you may have the drive from there. Sometimes you get the drive because you are just stubborn person. You don't want to be controlled. You cherish freedom. You like free lifestyle. You're very stubborn. You're like the free range man. Sometimes that drive comes from that, because most people who try businesses, most of them don't want to be controlled that much. So out of that, you may just be testing some ideas, and one of those ideas could work. So if they work, you just happen by chance to become an entrepreneur in quote. So sometimes just the desire to be rich, so you want to sell anything just to get money, or you want to go and try something, talk to people, because you want money, you want to be rich, you want to be wealthy, you don't want to be poor. And sometimes out of that, you may have that drive to build a business. And so these are factors that can influence people by getting that entrepreneurship drive. Just that you just want you loathe, you hate poverty, you don't want to lack. That one can put some kind of force in you to start a business, to become an entrepreneur. The fact that you don't want to be poor and go around begging people, and you looking for help everywhere. People of that tendency, people of that kind, easily look at starting business. And you see, they just start something, and maybe out of that, an original idea or a better idea will come out, and that may end up becoming a business. Sometimes it's just the drive. Sometimes the drive comes because you want to just prove something as a human being. You just want to commit yourself to doing something, and that something may happen to be a business that you may end up building. And if you're fortunate and you build that business, it comes out of that you wanted to just prove yourself that me too I can build a business. So that drive, those are the things that maybe the country can encourage, the country can enforce, can imprint, maybe in our schools, maybe in our culture, maybe in our environment, because not one thing really prepares people to have that entrepreneurship drive. I think there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them that come to play before somebody may be pushed to become an entrepreneur and to have that drive to keep going. So it's not just one thing that may prepare somebody to become an entrepreneur. Sometimes the school they went, the kind of school and the kind of culture that was in the school may trigger some kind of entrepreneurship drive in them. If you go to school in an environment where people want to just do something to be successful, and they'll give a little attention to academics, academic successes, but they want to prove themselves as somebody who was able to do something and brag about it. If you go to such schools, sometimes you may end up becoming an entrepreneur. So even in our country, I think that there are some schools in some regions that the people who go there may, by accident, end up, having that entrepreneurship drive than some other schools. Some other schools may be able to produce a lot of politicians, a lot of low risk, professions. And there are some other schools in some regions that promote that pride of achievement. And if you want your son, for instance, to start a business or to become an entrepreneur, which you should want, then you may even look at the kind of secondary school that you send them to. Because there are some of the secondary schools, when they go there, they only wish to become diplomats and politicians and career, all those, the secured ones. And there are other areas, because of the culture, because of the way they do their things, because of the independence in thinking. Because independence in thinking is part of those things that contribute to the entrepreneurship drive. That independence of thinking, that pride of success, that pride of achievement. There are places that you can see these ones are more prevalent in this kind of culture, this kind of region, than some other region. So if you even look, there are cultures that have produced a lot of people. Even though they have gone to school, they still go and start businesses, and they are not worried about starting businesses at all. And they don't even pride themselves with the fact that they have been to school. Because for people from those cultures, what they really want is the independence to achieve their dreams. Now, there are other cultures that even if you have built a business, nobody respects. They just want to say that you work with the government. You're a director of this, you're a director of that. So the entrepreneurship drive, sometimes it happens to be with maybe where you went to school, and where the kind of culture that maybe in your formative years, the secondary school especially, the kind of things that you heard and the kind of things you were told. So if they build that kind of aggressiveness in you, for instance, if you want your children to start businesses, there are the kind of school that you send them to will eventually influence whether they will start business or they will wait for employment all their lives. It is not just by chance, it's influence. It's coming from the family, it's coming from the economy, it's coming from the school, it's coming. There are a lot of things that if you want them to have that drive, you can sometimes try to build that in them. So if you build that strength of questioning, that strength of self-confidence, that independent thinking in the child, in that young boy, he may end up becoming an entrepreneur. But if you control them and choose for them and decide for them and all those, it means that it will be very difficult for them to have the entrepreneurship drive. Because it doesn't just happen. It happens out of, they come out of a lot of factors. And part of it is what? Is the training. Part of it is the work histories. Part of it is their quest to innovate themselves, to try. They fidget with things. Part of it will be the fact that they want to be rich. And there's nothing wrong with, desiring to have money. It's important that somebody should have money. Nobody desires to be poor. I don't desire to be poor. So that desire may push some kind of entrepreneurship drive in you. And so if you see your child exhibiting that, it's likely that that child may try to become an entrepreneur. So it doesn't just happen. You can study people's drive, you can study people's choices, you can study people's tendency. And if you don't see that, it may mean that they may not become people who can create businesses, at least for themselves and also for the country. So if the country wants to produce a lot of entrepreneurs, that drive can be cultured, that drive can be built, that drive can be conditioned, because human beings really are product, maybe 50%, of their environment, of the culture, of the training, of the conditioning that they have had. Human beings, half of your time, half of what you become, most likely they are coming from the environment that you grew up. And so if you meet somebody who thinks as if he wants to start a business, you want to start this, look at what influenced him, ask his background, where he stayed, look at his choices, look at the books that he has read, look at the films that is his interests, look at the people you grew up with, those who influence him. Those things build up the entrepreneurship drive. But if they were sent to an environment where risk was never tolerated, independence in thinking was never tolerated, everything was chosen for that boy, it's not likely that that boy will have that kind of entrepreneurship drive. So in a country where everything is being chosen for the people, where people are socially conditioned to think the same, not to deviate, not to be deviant. You cannot have a lot of entrepreneurs who are able to have the capacity and the independence in thinking and to have that drive to create businesses. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, even though the little one, the small businesses that are still on table are important, I am talking about the one with a vision to create business, solving societal problems, and creating employment and creating value in terms of economics. I'm talking about something that is just beyond you going to open a small tabletop business and selling by yourself. I'm talking of somebody who has that vision to create business solutions, benefit financially, and also create jobs for society. That kind of drive, it comes from a culture that has encouraged the people to think and to cherish, independence in thinking. It comes from a culture that has respect for people who start businesses, and they have a little accommodation for business failure. And you can see that the community wants people to succeed. So when you are crediting money to the one who has started business, you give it at a rate that this one, even if they fail, they can pay. But if you encourage people to credit money to businesses at 10% a month, what you're telling us is that you don't believe that you have to produce a lot of entrepreneurs, because obviously in any culture that people are lending at that kind of rate, they will kill the entrepreneurship drive, because the failure rate will be so much. The non-performing, the loans that people can pay will be so much. The failure, the business will fail because the cost of finances is high. So if countries want to build, especially Africa, if we want to build a lot of these guys and promote the entrepreneurship drive, we may just have to look where and look at the factors, because they are created. They are managed, they are promoted, they are established, and human beings, when you create that kind of culture, that kind of environment, you will produce entrepreneurs. So if you want to even let your children to start businesses, there are factors that you can do, there are things that you can teach them, there are conditions that you can give them, that they would have that kind of thinking, that kind of independence, that kind of originality. They will try something, innovate, dare to take risk. They are all, a lot of them are coming from conditioning and training and upbringing. So the country itself can do the same. Country, if you want to produce a lot, you can do the same. But if our attention and that which is important to us is anything but this, then the unemployment will continue to be there, and the Chinese will come and flood here with everything that they are producing, which is inferior, and they will come and do what they say, and then we will end up being in anything but in charge of our economy, because the people who control the wealth are the people who have taken the risk, and a lot of them are with the entrepreneurs. And so thank you very much for watching. So the entrepreneurship drive, you can create it yourself. If the government is not doing it and you have nowhere to go, you can create it yourself. There are those that the government creates, and there are those that we create ourselves. At least the one for financial independence can create a lot of drive in you, and the fact that you want to reach your goals. You want to set something that is challenging to you, and you want to realize it. That can be a good drive for you. And the fact that you are just free agent, you're free agent. You want to just try something. You don't want to be tied down and be controlled. Those things can continue to give you that drive. So it's a lifestyle that you create, and nobody just happens to become a businessman. There are things that contributed to you becoming an entrepreneur, whether you did them consciously or you didn't do them consciously. So nations that have produced a lot of entrepreneurs, that have produced a lot of entrepreneurship drive, is because those factors happen. They didn't just come out of nowhere. Maybe they did not intentionally create it, sorry, but the culture may have influenced it, where they push people to think independently and to have that pride to create something with their life. And when people fail in business, it's not like that's the end of their lives. The culture may have a way of encouraging those people to try again. The pride in trying something and failing being more in the country, in the society, than the father that didn't try anything and I'm perfect. So when you come from a culture where they respect the one who has never made any mistake more than the one who dare to try and failed, then you will see that you will not have a lot of people creating wealth. And those countries, if they are free market countries, they are poor because they are not pushing, the culture is not pushing people to become risk takers. And so the driving, and so the few people that they even have, those people even give up because nothing is done to encourage them to dare. So the drive will reduce, and then the same people will go around and say that our economy is being taken by foreigners. It is being taken by foreigners because you create that drive in people by making sure this environment is right for you to produce a lot of these guys who think and behave and create businesses as entrepreneurs. you know so your family, you can do the same. You yourself, you can create the same kind of force around you, where you study and you build your mind with these kind of factors. If you do them, you don't need to even pray for your children. They will end up becoming that because it's a tool that you give them. It's a tool. So you encourage that boy to ask questions and to think on his feet and try to say something, try to do something. And if he tries and he fails, don't castigate him. You encourage him to try again. That's how you build that drive. So he knows that, okay, if I try something and I fail, it does not mean that I should stop there. I should start again. But in school, when he fails the exam, they will laugh at him. So that is not the one that is going to build that entrepreneurship drive. That entrepreneurship drive is going to be built by a father or a mother of that son or that daughter who's encouraging that daughter or that son to continue to try, even if they fail. Because the joy is in them becoming successful with that which they create. That thing that they see in their mind when they have been able to create it, that joy overcomes every failure that they may have endured in getting to their goals. So these are the things that will create that kind of entrepreneurship drive in your chart or in the community or in the country. And the more you have a lot of this, then we are going to close that gap between industry and academia. Because those who will pick the research, the results from the universities and build them into businesses and products and services are the ones who have entrepreneurial drive, entrepreneurship drive. Those people are the ones who can move the concept, the research findings into building proper businesses. The lecturers can't do that because theirs is to be academic, and the politicians may never do that. Theirs is to make sure that the government policies favor people who are starting businesses. But the middle is filled by people who have been conditioned with this drive to take an idea and build a business with it, to take a product and innovate on it, to take something and build and create economic value for it. And those are the people we call entrepreneurs, and we have to just find a way of making sure that we produce a lot of them. We just have to find a way of producing a lot of these guys. There are other continents, other countries may have the luxury. They may not even care to produce some of these things. But those people are dangerous species that we need. People who have come out of this condition to creating businesses, even if it's one business that they created and employ somebody. These are the people that we should, if you were thinking of growing an economy, growing a country, growing a continent, these are the guys that we should be looking for. With that drive and multiplying them. Because the more we have a lot of them, the more we can create a force. And that force maybe can create the kind of continent and the kind of solutions that we are looking for. So thank you very much for watching, and you may share them with your friend if you find them very much informative. If you don't have that drive, whatever that you said to do, you give up. If you don't have that entrepreneurship drive and you start a business, you give up. And that's why there are a lot of people who started a business and they gave up, because they didn't know these other factors contributed to the drive and the strength of their drive. They didn't know. They didn't know that the cost of money was so high, so it made them give up. They didn't know that because they didn't see any example growing up may have affected their mind in terms of what it takes to build a business. Maybe the kind of place that they went to school, they have affected them. So there are factors that play this kind of key roles, and that can continue to build that drive, entrepreneurship drive, or there are factors that can dissipate and destroy, annihilate the entrepreneurship drive in our people. And the more we have them destroyed in terms of the drive, the dangerous those things are for the development of our country and the development of our continent. So thank you very much for watching.